Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. In part 1 of this presentation, physicist Wal Thornhill began his discussion on the electrical nature of stars with an examination of pulsars, electromagnetic pulsing signals in space which astronomers attribute to so-called neutron stars. Today, Thornhill offers an in-depth juxtaposition of the standard theory of stars versus that of the electric universe. As he explains, the evidentiary basis for a radically new view of stars has never been stronger.
Clearly, if neutron stars don't exist, it calls into question the theory of their birth in a supernova explosion. Neutron stars are believed to be the end-of-life remnant for stars 8 to 15 times the mass of the Sun in a supernova explosion. The story goes that heavy elements accumulate in the star's core until nuclear fusion switches off. Without the support of the energy radiating from the inner core, the outer core collapses inwards under gravity and reaches a velocity of up to 23% of the speed of light, and the sudden compression increases the temperature of the inner core up to 100 billion kelvins. The resulting explosion and blast of neutrinos is thought to blow away the original star's hydrogen-rich outer layers, and the remnant of the now super-collapsed core is believed to be a pulsating neutron star, or pulsar. Notice that this incredible scenario implies an understanding that simply doesn't exist of how matter and gravity behaves inside a star. It takes no account of the electrical structure of matter, which renders all conjectures about so-called degenerate matter in white dwarfs with densities of 1 ton per cubic centimetre, and neutron star densities of 1 billion tons per teaspoonful, sheer mathematical fantasy. Plasma scientists have shown that an ordinary stellar body under electrical stress can simply explain pulsars. So if neutron stars don't exist, the obvious next question is, do we understand supernovae? The simple answer is no, and this has serious repercussions for Big Bang cosmology. Space.com reported in February 2006 that the supernova model doesn't work. The problem is that in even the best computer simulations, the shock wave isn't powerful enough on its own to break through the dense layers of superheated gas that envelops the core. In the models, the shock wave stalls as if muffled by a blanket, and the supernova explosion never occurs. But as usual, this finding has had no effect on the firm belief in the story of supernovae. Now we have confirmation that a supernova explosion leaves a normal stellar remnant and not a mythical neutron star. A report in phys.org on November the 8th says, "A star exploded, survived, and exploded again more than 50 years later. It's the celestial equivalent of a horror movie villain, a star that wouldn't stay dead." The finding, published by Nature, completely confounds existing knowledge of a star's end of life. Somehow, this star exploded more than half a century ago, survived, and exploded again in 2014. This supernova breaks everything we thought we knew about how they work, said E.A. Archivi of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and Las Cumbres Observatory. This is another in a long list of discoveries that defy the standard model of how stars work. Standard models in physics have become a tyrannical impediment to scientific progress over the last century. They are taught as facts rather than provisional guesses. In the 21st century, the children's rhyme should be, "Twinkle, twinkle, electric star, scientists don't know what you are." The life and death story of stars is based on the simple assumption that a nuclear furnace hidden in the core of a star progressively fuses hydrogen and some heavier elements over the star's lifetime, changing the star's spectrum and appearance over time. A bright star finally dies with a supernova bang or a white dwarf whimper, depending on the star's size. The story assumes all kinds of things that are beyond normal experience and experimental confirmation. First and foremost is the assumption that Newton's law of gravity works inside a star the same way it does in space. This can't be assumed so long as there is no physical explanation for the force of gravity or how matter exhibits mass and gravity. Arthur Eddington gave us the standard model of the interior of stars in his 1926 publication, the internal constitution of the stars. It was written at the end of the gaslight and horse and buggy era, following the discovery of nuclear energy, which seemed the only way to explain how the sun could shine for the billions of years estimate of the age of the Earth. Eddington dismissed any outside influence in a single sentence. No source of energy is of any avail unless it liberates energy in the deep interior of the star. It's not enough to provide for the external radiation of the star. We must provide for the maintenance of the high internal temperature, without which the star would collapse. Unbelievably, this old hot air balloon model of an isolated star remains unchallenged in the 21st century, while stars are being found that shouldn't exist according to that model. Eddington's model is based on stars imagined as a ball of gas, chiefly hydrogen, held together by gravity while being expanded by radiation pressure from nuclear fusion in the core. Unfortunately for science, the timing of this model was premature. Electric lights were just becoming commonplace, and the study of electric discharges in low-pressure gases was in its infancy. Otherwise, this theoretical blind alley might have been avoided. The damage done by Eddington's influence and his uncritical support of Einstein has been immense in physics, but that's another story. Eddington's mathematics might be correct, but he was deluded in thinking his was a practical model. His stars are inside out, with the lightest element, hydrogen, in the core. His model also requires a radiation zone, unknown in any other hot body, but introduced to break down the lethal radiation from the core to the cool photospheric radiance. Eddington ignored dark sunspots which show the sun to be cooler beneath the bright photosphere. That was later blamed, as usual, on magnetism conveniently generated out of sight inside the star. The standard model of stars is untestable and so complex as to be unfalsifiable, let alone usefully predictive. So new discoveries merely add to the ramshackle Rube Goldberg model. Mysteries and exceptions abound, but the following supernova discovery is a spectacular failure of that model. A bizarre supernova that keeps exploding over and over again and refuses to die is a natural outcome of my electric universe supernova model published in the IEEE Transactions on Plasma Science in 2007. That electrical model has a heavy element core, as normal for any celestial body, and an extensive outer atmosphere of mostly hydrogen and some helium. There is no energy source deep in the star's core producing radiation or capable of blowing the star apart. What we call a star is a plasma discharge in double layers at the top of the star's hot, bloated ionosphere. A supernova explosion occurs when the photospheric double layers explode. Energy stored beyond the star in the galactic circuit then is focused down onto a single hapless star which for a brief time outshines all the stars in the galaxy as a true arc light. Electric arcing between the photosphere and the liquid or solid surface of the star accelerates heavy elements into space, which is where they were recently found, to theorists' great puzzlement, in the outer reaches of the expanding debris. A Phys.org report of March 29, 2012 says, "A star explodes, turns inside out." The study found that most of the iron which according to theoretical models was originally on the inside of the star is now located near the outer edge of the remnant. Surprisingly, there is no evidence from X-ray or infrared observations for iron at the centre of the remnant, where it was formed. Also, much of the silicon and sulfur as well as the magnesium is now found towards the outer edges of the still expanding debris. The distribution of the elements indicates that somehow the star turned inside out. So a supernova outburst ejects heavy elements from the star's surface and may leave an ordinary stellar remnant. Certainly there is no neutron star because there is no gravitational collapse. These findings are explained in my peer-reviewed paper, which discards the idea that the energy of a supernova event must come from within the star. It explains the intricate bipolar structure of the much closer and easier to observe supernova 1987A, which is 169,000 light-years away in the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's the same kind of Type II supernova as the so-called death-defying one. There is evidence of external electrical triggering of supernovae, which is shown in the non-random periodic behaviour of extragalactic supernovas. An independent researcher, Ella Sanders, in 2003, found a periodicity in multiple supernovae events in galaxies. Such behaviour is inexplicable in the conventional view of isolated stars. The plasma cosmologist Anthony Peratt wrote in a communication with Sanders, "In a plasma universe as espoused by Hans Alfvén, periodicity of high-energy density events in the universe is what one expects. The reason for this is that we view the universe as we view the solar system and laboratory plasmas as being filled with current conducting filaments. As such, energy built up in one part of space can be released hundreds of megaparsecs away by the filamentary transmission lines. This release is usually found either in solar plasmas, auroras, or pulsars to be periodic. Supernovae in the plasma community have been viewed as the release of energy from a galactic dimensional filament with a very plasma-like behaviour. This now appears to include periodicity, a predictable apparent timeliness between successive events." End of quote. A supernova explosion is caused by the electrical energy stored over some vast volume in a galactic circuit being focused catastrophically into the photospheric double layer of a star, in the same way we saw the opening circuit breaker spectacularly discharge the transmission line energy in a very small space. The entire star is subjected to arcing down to the surface, far below the photosphere. The arcs accelerate matter from the cool, dense body of the star upward against gravity into space. The intense electrical energy generates the radioactive isotopes seen in the ejecta. That accounts for the prodigious initial lightning-like flash of radiation from a supernova and subsequent slow fading of the ejected matter from the unfortunate star. Supernova 1987A appeared in southern skies in February 1987, the first time in the telescopic age that a naked-eye supernova appeared in our night sky. Its beautiful, complex bipolar configuration defies explanation as the result of an explosion. None of the official explanations make any sense. I gave a detailed explanation of the structure in terms of a plasma Z-pinch on my website in August 2005. The supernova has precisely the same kind of equatorial ring of variable bright knots that were discovered about our own solar system by the IBEX and Cassini missions. However, the high energy of the supernova lit up the star's circuit for us to plainly see. Even more compelling are the fainter, more distant axial rings of supernova 1987A, which are due to polar double layers in the star's circuit, as predicted by Hans Alfvén decades ago. The same beautiful hourglass form is seen about stars at the centre of so-called planetary nebulae. In this example, we see the more diffuse axial rings, and the, quote, bizarre and mysterious alignment of nearby planetary nebulae, unquote, is natural when stars are connected electrically by galactic circuits like beads on a necklace. The most spectacular example of the wiring harness of a star can be seen side-on in the Red Square Nebula, where the polar Birkeland current filaments are electromagnetically pinched at the star to form the X-shaped spokes, and double-layer rings are spaced along the polar axis to form the rungs. It's important to notice that plasma cosmology provides a single mechanism to explain supernovae, pulsars, gamma-ray bursts, and planetary nebulae. The electric universe model of bright stars has them all producing the heavy elements seen in their spectra by a process of non-thermal catalytic nuclear reactions in their electrified photospheres. A bright star's radiant energy is a combination of electrical and nuclear fusion energy. There are lessons here to be learnt by nuclear scientists who have been promising thermonuclear energy, like the Sun, since mid-last century. But first they must understand the Sun and the electrical nature of matter. The heavy elements produced in the photosphere continually rain down on the cool body of the star well below the photosphere. This makes far more sense than having rare supernovae explosions as the sole source of heavy elements, which are then lost into deep space. So exploding stars are the catalyst for exploding theories. In October 2011, I wrote A Nobel Prize for the Dark Side, about the prize in physics being awarded to 3 astrophysicists for discovering the accelerating universe. This supposed discovery requires dark energy to make up 73% of the universe. The evidence interpreted in this weird way comes from comparing the redshift distances of galaxies with the brightness of their supernovae, used as a standard candle. It was found that the supernovae in highly redshifted galaxies are fainter than expected, indicating that they are further away than previously estimated. This in turn implied a startling accelerating expansion of the universe, according to the Big Bang model. It's like throwing a ball into the air and having it accelerate upwards. So a mysterious dark energy was invented which fills the vacuum and works against gravity. So much for modern cosmology. Meanwhile, the electric universe recognizes the outstanding astronomer and cosmologist Dr. Halton Arp, who wrote, "The kind of theory we're looking for is simple, capable of being visualized, one that can connect together the puzzling observational facts that presently confound understanding." His extensive telescopic observations showed that highly redshifted quasars are connected umbilically to nearby active galaxies, which means redshift is a measure of youthfulness and not distance from us. Quasars are not at the edge of the visible universe. Arp showed that quasars become brighter, more massive, and their redshift diminishes as they mature and become a companion galaxy. All of these features indicate an increasing energy within the quasar as it develops. So supernovae cannot be used as standard candles because the energy available is lower in a youthful high redshift galaxy. With the redshift distance relationship discredited, we have no Big Bang, no expanding universe, and no accelerating expansion. Hubble took the view to his grave that the Big Bang was not the correct interpretation of his discovery, but that fact is never mentioned. Ironically, the Hubble Space Telescope has been instrumental in proving he was right, but beliefs always trump science. There are none so blind as those who have been taught not to see. So when we read science reports like, "The finding published by Nature completely confounds existing knowledge of a star's end of life," and "This supernova breaks everything we thought we knew about how they work," it seems reasonable to expect that this would focus the minds of experts in many specialties, but it doesn't. As a leading psychologist, Ian McGilchrist, has shown, our education systems reinforce the human response to discordant information, which is to deny it and quickly forget it. That's why big breakthroughs in science have often come from outsiders who have not been taught what's impossible. Electrically exploding stars blow up the Big Bang theory, thermonuclear stars, the life and death story of stars, neutron stars, pulsars, and white dwarfs. They support Alfvén's view that compact high-energy outbursts in space are electrical. It also replaces physically impossible black holes with the compact, energy-dense plasmoids proposed by plasma cosmology. It clears the Augean stables of astrophysical theory. It connects together the puzzling observational facts that presently confound understanding. Evidence-based science requires that we really wipe the drawing board clean and without prejudice examine all of the evidence as if we are beginners. That generally requires adventurous individuals rather than institutions. Have a happy and thoughtful New Year.
For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info.